How's everyone doing today? This is Chris, aka the Winter Soldier on Mad Bean Pedals Forum, and this is the first in a series of videos that I want to do talking about the UV printing enclosure service from Tayda Electronics. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to the Tayda website, and to get to the UV printing page, we're going to go to Hardware, Enclosures, and UV Printing Service. So now that we're on the UV Printing Service page, they give you all the parameters up and down on this page to get a successful UV print. So the first thing that they talk about is don't use Affinity, only use Adobe Illustrator. They don't support other vectorized programs. There's ways around this, and we'll talk about that later. The first thing is everything has to be vectorized. They tell you that if you don't vectorize, your print will not look nice at all. This is very important. If you don't vectorize text, images, chances are they're going to kick it back to you. I've had instances where I tried early on not vectorizing certain things, and it did not print well. And then later on, they kicked it back to me and said it had to be fixed before they could print it again. The next thing that they're going to tell us is all the parameters for the artboard sizes. And here they give you examples of each size with the correct dimensions for printing on the artboard. They give you examples that you can download and use as a template. The next thing that they tell us is that all the artwork must be created with CMYK and not RGB colors. This is important because if you don't do that, they're going to kick it back to you. Ask me how I know. Tried it in the beginning, learned my lesson. They also tell you that you can't print in gold and silver color and its tones. That's not entirely true. Depending on the color that you're going for, you can get sort of a faux metallic color by using different opacities, different tones, and kind of overlapping the two in certain spots. I've had good success with that in a couple different image traces that I've done, and they turned out perfectly fine. Alright, the next part that they tell us is that there are to be 3 different layers when we submit our final PDF. The 3 layers are going to be the white layer, the color layer, and the gloss layer. So, when you set up your artboard and you get out your design fully done, you have to remove the elements that you don't want, whether it's your drill template, your hardware layer, anything like that, and only submit 3 layers. So your color layer is going to be the majority of your design. Everything is going to be in there that you want for your images, your text, all that stuff. Anything with color goes in there. The white layer is really just to help the color layer have true representation of its colors against a darker enclosure. If you were just using a white enclosure, you could probably get away with just a color layer, but if you're using anything other than white, I would really suggest using the white layer as well. It'll really help your colors pop and stand out and really look like what they are. We're going to have an example of that later down on the page. The gloss layer, not just adding additional protection, but gives a nice sheen to contrast the rest of the pedal. Alright, so now they're going to give us information on the color swatches that we have to use for the white and the gloss layer. Down here, they give examples of the swatches that are used from the Roland VersaWorks library. They give a link right here to where you can download and install into your vector software. This one is for Adobe Illustrator, but if you go on the Roland website, they have different versions that you can use for different software. And here are examples of what the white and the gloss colors look like. So when you create your layers, before you submit the PDF, you have to apply these 2 swatches to those 2 layers. It's the only way to get those to print. If you don't do that, they're going to kick it back to you, tell you you have to fix it. So here they talk about the color layer, and to put anything with color in your artwork, except for the white color, which I don't really understand. You can still have white in there. They offer a double white pass layer which to me doesn't make a lot of sense, because you could do your single layer of white and then have white in the color layer and essentially get the same thing. But everything in color has to be in the color layer. If you have anything color in the white layer or the gloss layer, that's not going to print. They're going to ask you to fix it before you do anything else. And I can't stress enough to double check your work before you submit it. Just make sure that all the layers are correct in terms of what goes in them. So right here they talk about not having things overlap each other in the color layer. This is very important because in vector programs, the way that they print is the layers, and if you have, they give the example right here of a red house and a blue cat, and if they're overlapping and not punched out, then where they overlap will make a purple color when it prints. And that's not anything that they're going to fix. So if you have that like that, they give an example up here on how to do that in Illustrator so that it punches it out and you just have the red on the layer below and the blue here, and it's not overlapping at all. So you actually have blue and red and not purple right here. And the other thing they talk about is printing dark colors on a dark color enclosure. This is where the white layer comes in. So the example down here is they did not do the white layer. So as you can see, the colors don't look like they're supposed to. They look fuzzy, they look blown out as a bad representation. This example over here, they have the white layer. So the red actually looks like red, the blue looks like blue. This is why on dark color enclosures, the white layer is really, really important. Right here, they give examples of the gloss V and the gloss M. So the gloss V is a varnish, the gloss M is a matte. The matte will give you a matte sheen where, especially if you're working on a matte enclosure, that might look really nice. I've never used it, so I don't know what it looks like in person. I've only used the varnish. I prefer the varnish. It gives a nice sheen. It gives the colors a much deeper look. And then they give you an example down here of the price range. And then they tell you again, make sure you use the Rollin swatch in your gloss layer. So finally, at the end here, we have one last warning and a handful of bullet points to make sure that you remember everything you read above and that you don't make a mistake, which more than likely you will. So the first thing is they're reminding you that everything, including text, must be vectorized in your artwork. The next bullet point, make sure your artwork is not bigger than your artboard. This is important because if there's anything hanging outside the borders of that artwork, it's not going to print. They're going to send it back and tell you to fix it. I've never had this happen, but I've heard instances of other people that have had this problem. The next bullet point, please do not put the color of your background anywhere in the artwork. It will try to print that. A lot of us, myself included, when we do a design, we like to do a layer with the color of the enclosure so we can really see how it looks. If you don't get rid of that layer, it's going to try and print it. And I can't imagine how ridiculous that's going to look, trying to print that color on that color enclosure. So make sure that if you do that, that you get rid of it before you export into a PDF. Lastly, they tell you don't UV print on a bare enclosure. It says that it will peel off easily, and we recommend ordering UV printing on a painted enclosure only. I've seen a couple people do this. I don't know how durable it is. They claim that it looks okay and that it just seems fine. So do that at your own discretion if you want to. And at the bottom of the page is all the ordering for the different services that you want. There's double layers of white, of color, gloss, and whichever size enclosure you're ordering for, which we'll talk about in another video in depth about what all these are and how to order them and then how to apply them. So that's it for this section. The next section we'll be talking about artboards and how to set those up. So see you in that section.